I used to think the smallest acts of kindness came from love: a cup of tea before bed, a warm smile in the morning, someone saying, "You rest, Mama. I'll handle everything." That's how it began. The tea. Always the tea. Every night she made it for me. Her hand steady, her voice soft, her smile sweet enough to melt stone. At first I was grateful. My bones ached. My memory sometimes slipped. I thought she was helping because she cared. But slowly something changed. My vision blurred. My hands trembled. Some mornings I woke up not remembering what day it was. I told her I felt dizzy, and she only smiled, pressing another cup into my hands. There was something in that smile. Something cold. Something rehearsed. The kind of smile a person wears when they already know how the story ends. So I started to watch, to listen, to pretend I didn't see how her eyes followed me when I poured my drink down the sink, how her voice softened too quickly when my son entered the room, how she kept whispering about the will, the house, and after Christmas. Tell me, what would you do if the one person meant to care for you began to feel like your enemy? Would you speak up, or would you stay silent and wait? She thought I was weak. She thought I was blind to her greed. But she was wrong. I was watching. She thought I was blind to her greed, but I was watching. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Comment your thoughts below. And don't forget, like, share, and follow for the next part of this story. The first time she offered me tea, I remember the smell of honey and herbs. It was a rainy evening, and the house was quiet except for the sound of the wind pressing against the windows. My daughter-in-law walked in softly, her smile gentle, her voice warm. "You should rest more, Mama," she said, setting the cup beside me. "This will help you sleep." I took it without question. She had married my son only a year earlier, and I was still learning to love her, learning to trust her. She was polite, tidy, and respectful, the kind of woman any mother would pray for her son to marry. I had no reason to doubt her. The tea was warm, sweet, and comforting. That night, I slept deeply, deeper than I had in months. When I woke, the morning light was already high, my body heavy, my head filled with fog. I thought it was age, maybe my blood pressure, maybe fatigue. She smiled when I told her. "You've been overworking yourself," she said. "You need to slow down." And so it became a routine. Every night, she'd bring me tea. Every morning, I'd wake slower. My steps felt weaker. My hands shook when I tried to hold a spoon. I told myself it was normal. I was getting old, after all. But then came the memory slips, the small ones at first. Forgetting where I kept my purse. Forgetting to turn off the stove. Forgetting names I'd known all my life. Still, she stayed close. Always kind. Always there. "Don't worry, Mama," she'd whisper, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You're safe here." Safe. That word started to feel strange. Some nights I'd catch her watching me from the kitchen doorway, her eyes fixed, her face unreadable. And when I looked up, she'd smile again, soft and sweet. Trust is a slow poison, too. It numbs you before it kills you. I didn't know it then, but that first sip, the one I took with gratitude, was the beginning of everything that would follow. By the time I realized what was happening, the poison was already in more than my tea. It was in my home. The days began to slip through my fingers like water. I would wake long after sunrise, my limbs heavy as if someone had draped stones across my body in the night. My head felt thick, my tongue slow, my memory softer than before. At first, I told myself it was age. Everyone slows down eventually, but this felt different. It wasn't just my body, it was my mind. Simple things, the names of neighbors, the sound of the phone ringing, even my own handwriting, felt far away. And through it all, she was always there, smiling, bringing tea, moving things in the house without telling me. You misplaced your keys again, Mama, she would laugh, holding them up like a prize. You need to be more careful. Sometimes she would shake her head softly, whispering to my son when they thought I couldn't hear. She's forgetting things. We should think about her safety, about the house, about her care. My son would glance at me, uneasy, then turn away. Maybe you're right, he'd say. The walls began to close in. I stopped going to church, stopped visiting friends. I didn't want them to see me like that, slow, unsure, a shadow of the woman I had been. And when they called, she would answer for me. She's sleeping, she'd say. She's tired, always tired. That word began to define me. Tired, weak, confused. But somewhere beneath the fog, a small voice whispered, "This isn't you." I would look at my hands, trembling, and remember all the years I had worked, raised my son, paid for the house with my own sweat. That strength hadn't disappeared overnight. Something was wrong, and each night, when she pressed another cup of tea into my hands, the voice inside me grew louder. Watch her. Pay attention. You're not losing your mind. Someone wants you to think you are. I started to hide my sips, pouring some down the sink, pretending to drink, pretending to be weak. The more I acted like I was fading, the bolder she became, and the more she revealed without knowing it. It wasn't just my memory she was stealing, it was my life, and I wasn't about to let her take it without a fight. It happened on a Thursday evening, quiet and cold, the kind of night when the house feels smaller, the air heavier. I was sitting in my room, pretending to be asleep. The cup of tea she had left me was still warm on the table, untouched. The hallway light cut through the crack under my door. I heard footsteps, soft, careful ones, followed by her voice, then his. "She's getting worse," she whispered. "By Christmas, it'll be time. We'll move her out quietly. Say it's for her own good." My heart stopped. My own son's voice followed, low and uncertain. "Are you sure it's the right thing? It's her house." A pause. Then her tone sharpened. "Our house. Think about the future. About the baby. You said she wanted us to have a good life, didn't you? Well, this is it. She won't even notice once she's in that home." The hallway went silent again. I could hear my own heartbeat in the stillness. My throat tightened. The air felt thin. They were standing right outside my door, plotting my exile, in my own home. The same walls that had held my son as a child, the same rooms I had scrubbed and repaired through winters when we barely had heat. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the sting of betrayal deeper than any wound. For months, I had believed I was losing myself, but now I saw the truth. I wasn't sick by nature. I was being made sick. I waited until their voices faded, until the front door closed behind them. Then I sat up, slowly, the fog clearing from my mind like smoke after a fire. My hands trembled, but not from weakness, from anger. I whispered to myself, "After Christmas." They thought I would be gone by then, forgotten, locked away. But I made a vow at that moment. They would get their Christmas, and it would be one they'd never forget. That night, I stopped being their victim. I started being their mistake. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I barely recognized, tired eyes, pale skin, shaking hands. But behind that reflection was something they couldn't see anymore. I was awake. From that day on, I played my part. Every groan, every stumble, every confused stare, it was all an act. I let her think she was winning. When she brought me tea, I smiled faintly and thanked her, pretending not to notice the faint, bitter scent that lingered after each sip. I'd lift it to my lips, take one small swallow, and pour the rest into the flower pot beside my chair when she wasn't looking. The plant died within a week. I smiled as I threw it out. She thought I was slipping further each day. She spoke slower, louder, as if I was deaf. She started handling my mail to help me stay organized. She hid the property documents and kept the bank statements out of reach. My son watched her do it and said nothing. But silence has its uses. While she took control of the house, I took control of her confidence. I began asking innocent questions. What day is Christmas again? Do we still have that lawyer's number? Where did you say you put my pills? Each time, I'd catch the flicker of fear in her eyes, a moment's panic that maybe I knew too much. And when she thought I was asleep, I listened. She made calls in the kitchen, late at night. I learned her rhythm, her patterns, the way she always paused before saying my name, like she was spitting out something bitter. I moved slowly through the house, pretending to forget things, pretending to nap in the living room. But in those quiet moments, I began hiding my own tools, a small recorder beneath the couch cushion, another inside the vase on the shelf. Every whisper she made would become my weapon. There was power in pretending to be weak. She saw a fading old woman, but what she didn't see was that I was taking notes, recording words, counting the days until Christmas. She thought I was slipping away. I was watching her plan her own fall. The weaker she thought I was, the stronger my plan became. And by Christmas morning, she'd learned the price of underestimating me. It started small, a cheap voice recorder tucked into the cushion of my favorite chair. It clicked on with the softest sound, one no one could hear unless they were inches away. I had bought it years ago for dictating grocery lists, never imagining it would become my lifeline. Each morning, after she left the kitchen, I'd slip another recorder into place. One under the table, one behind the curtain rod in the hallway, one inside an old teapot no one touched anymore. Tiny, silent witnesses in a house filled with lies. At first, I only caught scraps. Her voice on the phone, low and clipped. Yes, after Christmas. The papers are almost ready. He'll sign it, don't worry. My son's voice sometimes appeared, always hesitant. Are you sure? She's still my mother. And then her, colder. She's a liability. I would sit at night, headphones pressed to my ears, listening to the people I had loved plotting against me. My hands would tremble, but not from weakness. This was proof. This was my shield. I learned to move like a shadow in my own home. I left drawers slightly ajar so she'd think I was careless. I let her lose my mail while I quietly photographed each envelope. I let her hide my bank cards, then called the bank myself and placed my own alerts. Every whisper, every lie, every cold plan she made, I captured them all. Hours of recordings, dozens of dates. I kept copies hidden in places she'd never think to look. This wasn't about rage anymore. Rage was loud, reckless. What I felt was sharper. A calm, cutting focus. Wisdom honed by survival. They thought I was fading into nothing, but I was building a case. Christmas was coming. And with it, the moment her perfect mask would crack. Each tape, each whispered plot, was another nail in the coffin of her scheme. By the time she realized, it would be far too late to stop me. It was a gray morning when I slipped out of the house. My son thought I was asleep. She thought I was too weak to leave my chair. That was the advantage of playing the part they had written for me. No one expected me to move without permission. Went to my doctor's office on the other side of town. It took everything I had to make the bus ride, but I sat there, quiet, holding my bag tight against my chest. Inside was one of the teacups she had served me from the night before. I had poured the liquid into a small sealed jar. The jar rattled softly with each bump in the road. The doctor was an old friend. He looked at me with concern when I walked in. "You look pale," he said. "Sit down." I handed him the jar. "Test this," I whispered. "And test my blood." Everything. I need to know what's happening. He didn't ask questions. He saw the fear in my eyes. He drew my blood himself. His hands were steady, but his eyes were dark with worry. I waited days for the results, pretending at home as if nothing had happened, pretending to drink, pretending to sleep, counting the hours. When I returned, he closed the door behind me and locked it. "You're being poisoned," he said quietly. The words hit me harder than any blow. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Even though I had suspected it, hearing it spoken aloud was like ice sliding down my spine. He showed me the papers, elevated toxins, the presence of substances never meant to be in a human body. "This is deliberate," he said. "I'll help you. But you need to be careful." I stared at the results. Months of confusion, weakness, shame, all of it explained by a single piece of paper. Proof, hard evidence. My hands stopped trembling, my back straightened. The fog I'd been living in cleared all at once. I slipped the test results into a folder and zipped it into my bag. "Thank you," I said. "I'll handle the rest." That night, as she handed me another cup of tea, I smiled back at her. She thought it was the smile of a helpless old woman, but it was the smile of someone holding a loaded gun. With the doctor's truth in my hands, I had everything I needed to end her game. Christmas would be her undoing. The house smelled of roasted meat and cinnamon. The lights blinked softly along the walls, and the tree stood tall, beautiful, bright, and hollow. It was Christmas Eve, my last night according to them. I could hear their laughter from the kitchen, forced, nervous, the kind that tries too hard to sound normal. My son poured wine, his hands shaking slightly. She stirred my tea at the counter, careful, measured, slow. I watched her reflection in the glass cabinet door. She didn't know I'd already seen the poison. She didn't know the doctor had confirmed it. I sat quietly in my chair, wrapped in a blanket. My breath came shallow, my movements weak. I had spent weeks perfecting that look, the look of a woman halfway gone. Every cough was timed, every stumble rehearsed. I was her masterpiece of pity. When she handed me the cup, I smiled faintly. "Thank you, dear," I said. My voice trembled, or rather, I made it tremble. She stood beside my son, whispering something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I already knew what they were thinking. "Let her rest after dinner," she would say. "We'll check on her in the morning." They wanted me to die quietly, in my sleep, under their roof. The clock struck 9. I sipped once, enough to convince them. Then, when they turned away, I poured the rest into the small plant by the window, the same one that had started turning yellow weeks ago. Proof upon proof. They toasted to the new year. I watched, unmoving, my face soft, unreadable. Inside, my mind was clear, sharp, waiting. When they finally went upstairs, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the wind outside and the faint echo of their laughter fading into silence. In that silence, I whispered to myself, "Let them sleep. Tomorrow, they'll wake to a different world." By morning, the truth would no longer be mine alone. Christmas morning arrived with sunlight sharp enough to cut through the curtains. The house was quiet, too quiet. Downstairs, the table was set for breakfast. I sat in my chair, dressed neatly, waiting. My cup of tea sat untouched. This time, it wasn't poisoned. They came down together. My son smiled nervously. She followed, eyes wary, calculating. She looked at me the way one looks at a problem that refuses to die. "Merry Christmas," I said softly, my voice steady now, my hands calm. Before they could answer, a knock came at the door. My son frowned, confused. She froze. I told him to open it. 2 police officers stepped inside, followed by my lawyer, the same lawyer who had handled my late husband's estate, the same lawyer she had tried to contact behind my back. "What's this?" she asked. her voice too high, too quick. The lawyer opened a folder and laid out several pages on the table. Blood test results, financial records, copies of the recordings. Her voice filled the room, tinny but clear, captured from the small device hidden behind the living room clock. After Christmas, we'll move her to the care home. She won't last long there. Then we sell the house. Silence followed. My son's face drained of color. He turned to her slowly, disbelief hardening into something darker. She tried to speak, but the officer raised a hand. "Mrs. Daniels," he said, "you're under arrest for attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit fraud." She screamed. It wasn't denial. It was rage, the kind that comes when a perfect plan burns to ash. As they led her out, she turned back toward me. "You old witch!" she spat. I didn't respond. I only looked at my son, broken and lost, and said quietly, "I warned you. You chose not to see." He sank to his knees, head in his hands. The sound of police radios filled the room. The air was cold, clean, and still. I leaned back, breathing slowly. 18 months of fear ended in a single morning. Justice didn't shout. It spoke softly, with proof and patience. She thought I'd die quietly. Instead, I watched her world crumble, one lie at a time. The morning after her arrest, the house was silent again, but it felt different. Not heavy anymore, not haunted. The air had space in it, like a long breath finally released. I walked from room to room, touching the furniture she once rearranged, the curtains she pretended to clean, the walls that had heard her lies. Every corner carried the ghost of a plan that failed. Every step I took was mine again. The lawyer came by that afternoon, papers in hand. "It's all yours," he said, "completely and legally." I smiled, not out of happiness, but relief. For the first time in years, no one was watching my bank account. No one was slipping powder into my tea. No one was awaiting for me to die. That night, I made a decision. Quietly, without ceremony. I called the agent and told him to list the house for sale. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted peace. This place had seen enough deceit to last a lifetime. Weeks passed. People came and went, walking through rooms filled with echoes. And then one morning I stepped outside and saw it. A bright red sticker across the sign on the lawn. Sold. I stood there for a long time, staring at that single word. It wasn't loss. It wasn't revenge. It was release. A final punctuation mark on a story that had nearly ended me. Neighbors whispered. Some said I should have stayed, made her face me again. Others said it was too soon, but they didn't understand. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. As the movers loaded the last box, I looked up at the window where she once stood, watching me weaken. I whispered, "You never own me. Not my body, not my mind, not my home." Then I turned, locked the door for the last time, and walked down the driveway toward a new life. Behind me, the house stood still. In front of me, the future waited, quiet, clean, and mine. Closing line, they whispered, "We'll kick her out after Christmas." But when they came back, all they found was a sold sign and a woman they could never destroy. The news broke 3 days after the arrest. Their faces were everywhere, my son's and hers. Headline after headline spoke of greed, deception, and attempted manslaughter. The world that once adored their smiles now spat their names like a curse. Court dates followed, statements, evidence. The recordings I had hidden beneath my nightstand played in a courtroom full of strangers. Every word she whispered, every cruel, calculated line echoed through those walls. The jury didn't look at her as a bride anymore. They saw what she truly was. My son sat beside her, pale and broken. He didn't defend her this time. He didn't look at me either. When the prosecutor asked if he knew what she was doing, he stayed silent. A silence that said enough. The sentence came swiftly. She was taken away, crying for mercy that she never once showed me. The same hands that once served me tea now trembled behind cold iron cuffs. My son wasn't spared either. Accessory charges, financial fraud, community service, reputation gone. And yet, as the gavel struck and justice was served, I didn't feel joy, only a heavy stillness. I had proven the truth. Yes, I had survived. But the cost of surviving was love. The love of a son I once nursed through fever, taught to walk, watched become a man. When they led her away, she turned once, eyes sharp with hatred. My son looked down, as if the floor could forgive him where I could not. That night, I sat alone in my new apartment. No servants, no noise, just quiet, the kind that hurts before it heals. I poured myself a cup of tea, real tea this time, and let the steam rise into the air. I thought about the years I lost pretending to be weak, about the holidays we'd never share again, about how betrayal rots even the deepest roots of family. And yet, somewhere beneath the ache, there was peace. Justice had spoken. The truth had walked into the light. They thought they buried me with poison. But the truth has a way of digging itself out. And when it does, it buries the guilty instead. I wake each morning to sunlight that touches my face softly, not like the harsh light that once glared through my old kitchen window. I live quietly now. My walls are bare, my space smaller, but the air feels pure. There is no whisper of deceit here, no scent of poisoned tea, only peace and the hum of a life rebuilt with steady, deliberate hands. Sometimes I still think of them, of my son's wedding day, of his lowered eyes, of the months I spent pretending to be helpless. But the pain no longer owns me. It visits like an old ghost, then drifts away. I let it, because I have learned that forgiveness is not about letting someone back in. It is about letting yourself move on. I learned that silence can be a weapon, but wisdom is the shield, that you do not always need to shout to be heard. Sometimes truth speaks for itself, even if it takes time. Many people told me I was strong, but strength isn't about revenge. It's about endurance. It's about waking up every day when your heart feels too heavy and still choosing to rise. If you're listening to me now, remember this. Not every battle is fought with fists or words. Some are fought in the quiet, in the way you hold your head when they think you're defeated, in the calm patience that waits for justice while others drown in their own lies. They thought age made me weak. They thought kindness made me blind. But I learned that the softest hearts often hold the hardest truths. I didn't destroy them out of hate. I revealed them with proof. Because when you let truth lead, revenge becomes unnecessary. The guilty undo themselves. Now I spend my days tending to my garden, reading old letters, and listening to the world move on without me. I have no need to be part of their noise anymore. My peace is louder than their apologies could ever be. They thought taking my home would break me, but they forgot the strongest walls are built inside the heart. Tell me, if someone you loved betrayed you like that, would you forgive, or would you make them remember? Some poisons do not come in bottles. They come in smiles, in gentle hands, in the voices that tell you they love you while slowly taking everything you have. I learned that too late, but I learned it well. Tell me, child, what would you have done if the people you trusted most tried to bury you behind their lies? Would you forgive? Or would you let the truth burn its way through their pretty masks? Share your thoughts below. I want to hear your heart, and stay with me. My next story is darker than this one, where family love turns into something far colder than poison. Like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes the sweetest faces hide the cruelest secrets.